BluMetric Environmental Inc. is Canada's premier water solution and environmental consulting company. BluMetric provides a full range of environmental consulting services supported by bespoke engineering solutions for emergency, self-contained, and permanent water systems, and is always mission ready with a full range of in-house support to ensure your mission is a success.
And welcome back to the Over the Horizon podcast here at MASS 2023. I'm Alan Dale. With me as always is my good buddy Jerry Carew from Gale Force Winds. We're sponsored by BluMetric, and thank you very much to BluMetric for being thought leaders to bring this conversation to the floor. Peter, you've been on the podcast many times before, and I think the last time we spoke may well have been MASS 2022. Bring us up to speed on what's been changing in your world since this time last year.
Sure. Well, thanks very much, Alan. Firstly, to you and Jerry for having me on again, and great to be back in Newfoundland and part of MASS 23. This is a tremendous opportunity to have important conversations about the aerospace and defense industry generally, but with a lot of focus on the Arctic and the role that provinces like yours and mine will play in the future of the Arctic and the protection of our sovereignty, the development of new enterprises there, and support for Indigenous people. I've personally been working at both McInnes Cooper, a law firm based around the whole region, as well as at Deloitte. And one of the areas of concentration for me has been in aerospace and defense, areas of compliance, helping companies protect themselves in many ways from things like cyber intrusions and threats to their intellectual property. So it's a busy space to be working, and personally, living and working in Nova Scotia, we've been dealing with our own trials and tribulations because of extreme weather and forest fires. The hurricane, and then coupled last week with this terrible flooding, had a big impact across our province.
Peter, the world has changed a lot even in the last year. Certainly threats emerging in Europe and the like. Are we as a country, do you think, setting ourselves up correctly?
In a word, Alan, sadly no. I think we've seen the Russians in particular begin their illegal invasion of of Ukraine, not just over a year ago, but going back to 2014. Yeah. In fact, when they started this harassment and invasion of Crimea, many, and I would count myself among them, felt that it was likely that we would find ourselves in this place where they would push across the borders in the southern Donetsk region and really try to subsume or to bring Ukraine, and I fear that Putin has even larger ambitions of trying to recreate the old Soviet Union, the Republic of the Soviet Union. And so this has been a devastating impact on the ground. Talking to people who have been there, some of whom are at this conference, we're talking $1 trillion in infrastructure damage, use of cluster bombs, and it's the impact on the people. You know, the long-suffering Ukrainian people. Further impacts abroad in terms of food security, and just a general malaise across Europe that this could result in an even broader, more extensive war on the continent. Hard to believe, in fact, when you look at the images that you see on the nightly news. If they were in black and white, you'd think it was Poland in 1939, the way this has unfolded.
So you say that we as a country need to do better. What do we need to do better? How can we improve? And we're in the right space to talk about this, of course, in the Defense Aerospace Forum.
So specifically, NATO has to do more. So more equipment, and I would say specifically more air defense. That's something that people like General Rick Hillier from Newfoundland and Labrador has been voicing for a long time. That necessity to give, without getting into the technical explanation of it, what the Israelis call Iron Dome. So the ability to take down any incoming artillery into cities, including the capital of Kyiv. Canada has made what I would describe across all countries modest contributions. We've sent armored vehicles, we have given them M777s, so long-range artillery, tanks, some protective equipment. I would say the more substantive initial contribution by Canada was training. Canada was part of the training and preparation of Ukraine for this potential invasion for many, many years. And I dare say that Canada's contribution was felt when this invasion began because of the preparedness that we had given them. But they're in tough, to say the least.
Yeah.
And NATO is, I think, going to be called on to give more. The unintended consequence of this invasion was to solidify the Allies and enlarge NATO. The exact opposite effect of what Vladimir Putin, this maniac, actually thought would happen. It has strengthened NATO's resolve, and I think given the world new impetus to push back against Russian aggression.
How do you de-escalate, though? That's the big concern, isn't it? How do you do that?
Yeah, the de-escalation or diplomatic part of this is very difficult. How do you find an off-ramp?
Yeah.
You know, to make it sort of personal, if somebody is in the process of beating the living daylights out of you, how do you then say, hey, can we talk about this?
Get in between them and stop it.
Yeah, and the traditional concept of peacekeeping or peacemaking has been, strained or absent even in this equation.
Peter, you've had an interesting lens on the defense, aerospace, marine community for a long time. You're now a thought leader in that space, and you're elevating that. How optimistic are you about the Canadian industry in this space, and particularly in Atlantic Canada largely? How optimistic are you about that?
Well, having said, writ large, the Canadian Defense Department and capabilities are being strained. We've given away equipment. Some of it is dilapidated. We're flying 45-year-old fighter aircraft. We finally replaced helicopters. We're rebuilding really the entire Canadian Navy with the new surface combatants, icebreaker capability, refueling. And so the steps that are being taken are the right ones. We need to accelerate that. And so to answer your question, I think there's huge opportunity for Canadian ingenuity, Canadian companies, those working currently within the defense and security space can partner with some of the bigger companies that are represented here, provide really niche but critical niche capabilities. I visited Kraken yesterday as a perfect example. Their sonar capability and underwater surveillance, which is of a preventative defensive nature. This isn't for offensive purposes, although they're using it for demining on the sea floor. Also useful in the energy sector, useful for prevention. And that's just one example. There's tremendous thought power out there. Plus we have a whole other world of defensive capability in cyber and preventing the intrusions, particularly of China, Iran, Russia, but others, lone wolf actors that are trying to get into our capabilities, steal our data, steal intellectual property. And so that's a whole other invisible or unseen defense apparatus that we need. And we have an organization as part of national defense called Communications Security Establishment. Most people really don't know about it or understand it, but they have great capabilities now. It used to be we wouldn't, to use a hockey analogy, we wouldn't come past our own blue line. Now we can go in the other team's end and cause effects and try to disrupt the harm before it arrives.
Peter, Mass put together every year, and I know you're a big supporter of it, and you're a big supporter of
As are you.
The Atlantic Canadian Aerospace and Defense Association. Tell me from your perspective how important an association like ACADA is in our country.
Well, to use a military term, it's a force multiplier. I think we've suffered as a region on occasion from working at cross purposes or duplicating but we're greater than the mass of our strength if we come across as a whole region. And we work together, we promote Atlantic Canadian technology and capabilities. I'd say the same on trade missions. When we present as Atlantic Canada, and we talk about the various strengths that the provinces and businesses that are operating here bring to the table, I think really from an external perspective, there's utility in doing it that way. It's not to take anything away from any province's capability, but it's a unifier when we're able to be out there saying Atlantic Canada is open for business. Come and take a look at what we're doing now. We can bring solutions to whatever problems you have. And I think, one of the origins, and I believe we've talked about this, I know you've promoted this as well, is our great universities and technical colleges here. I mean, MUN is, first in the world on a lot of the ocean technology. I know Dalhousie University is doing great. UNB has tremendous world-class cyber capability. And we're producing some of the greatest young minds, and that's our greatest resource. We just want to keep them here.
Isn't that true, though? I mean, I find that in Atlantic Canada is that collaboration of industry, academia, and governments, and the community supporting all of that, it really works well here. I've asked you this before, and maybe you've got a different answer this time, but what is the secret sauce here? Is it the people? Is that it? Or is there something else there?
I mean, for sure it's the people, the strength, I think, in our history, our traditions, and the struggle, I think, frankly, is part of it. Atlantic Canada has, I don't like the term anymore, but, punched above its weight. That's certainly true of military service. When you look, Alan, at the percentages of people joining the Canadian Forces today, we're still way above the national average. Naval traditions, people having, I think, in many cases come from Europe and settled here, and maybe having just a little bit more of an understanding of the threat environment and living in isolated communities, I think also, I'm going to say it, breeds a mental toughness that's also important, a resilience that we need in times like this. And so I think Atlantic Canada has a lot of natural advantages in its people, also in its geography. On a map, when you look at a world map, we have connectivity into Europe, certainly the UK, but further afield. And people want to do business with Atlantic Canadians. There's an unquantified sort of quality about the openness and the transparency and friendliness that people exhibit in this region.
Yeah, we Jerry and I just had the great privilege of doing this exact same thing at the Canadian or the Southeastern United States and Canadian Province trade show.
Right.
And it was evident in the room that Atlantic Canada was open for business, and a lot of our neighbors down south could see that. And it's great to see, and we're certainly, I think, as a region poised to move in the right direction, whether it's in the energy sector, environmental, and we're in an open and inclusive society to people coming in here. So it's a wonderful place to be at the moment, isn't it?
It is, and I think all of those qualities are true descriptors. I think there's a humility too, which is attractive, where we don't oversell. That can sometimes work against us too. We need to show confidence. We need to get behind our people and our products and promote ourselves sometimes better. But I've heard it from others, Americans and Europeans. They want to come here, and it leaves an impression. And when they've been to things like the Halifax International Security Forum, which I would plug and love to see you there at some point, because that is, again, a platform for people to come from around the world to see the security apparatus itself, to see and take part in the discussions that we're having, and to frankly understand that we're not minor players in this effort. We have contributed mightily for generations. I walked by this wonderful but poignant memorial that you have here in St. John's. And since I've been here, Afghanistan has been added as a plaque. But they're right alongside Beaumont Hamlet and, alongside Gallipoli, World War I and II. We have been contributing to global security. We, Atlantic Canadians, Newfoundland and Labradorians, throughout our history. And that's a point of pride, but we can never rest on our laurels, because I think I can say I've not seen this level of volatility or insecurity in the security system globally in my lifetime. We have more challenges on the horizon, and we've got to be clear-eyed and visionary about how we face them.
Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, I just want to say thank you. I listen. Just you're spellbinding speaker. You know what really gets me is that you've served this country at the highest level, and you continue to bring that leadership to what you're doing. It's a really important thing that you're doing, Peter. Keep doing it. I think you need to hear that because it's leadership that this country needs at a time that you just said it's full of challenges. So thank you for that leadership. Keep doing it.
I appreciate it very much. Always enjoy the conversations. But one small correction, I have not served at the highest level. The people who've served at the highest level are those in uniform, our emergency responders and police as well. Those are our greatest citizens. I'm inspired by them, and that's why I'm passionate about continuing to, I hope, make some contributions and continue to see them given all of the equipment, support, and resources that they need to do that important work.
Sir, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, as always.
Thank you.
Enjoy your thoughts, enjoy your vision, and I enjoy how you so freely contribute to leading these conversations. We very much appreciate it. I said it before, and I'll say it again. The world needs more Peter MacKay.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thanks. Appreciate it.
BluMetric wants to partner and work with Atlantic Canadian industries and organizations who are concerned about the water health of our planet and the people who inhabit it in an environmentally and culturally sensitive manner. BluMetric wants to join the growing number of like-minded, innovative Atlantic Canadian companies who are changing the environmental landscape for the globe in a world-class way.